She told people I was losing my mind until I exposed what she was doing behind closed doors. That's how this story ends, but it's not how it begins. No, the beginning was much quieter, much subtler, much easier to overlook. It began with a fall, one harmless fall in my garden that bruised nothing but my pride. I was 81, tending to my roses, reaching a little too far for a weed I should have ignored. My knee slipped, my hand missed the fence, and down I went into soft dirt. I wasn't hurt, not really. A scraped elbow, a bruised hip, nothing dramatic. But a neighbor saw me sitting in the garden, trying to get back up on my own, and the ambulance was called before I could stop it. That's how I ended up staying with my son and daughter-in-law. They insisted it was temporary. Just until you fully recover, they said. Just so someone is always nearby, they said. Just for a week or two, they said.
But weeks have their own way of stretching into months when you're elderly and everyone around you thinks they know what's best. And because I didn't want to worry my family, because I didn't want to seem stubborn, because I didn't want to be a burden, I said yes. Sometimes the most dangerous moments in your life happen when you're too tired to argue. My son, Daniel, meant well. He always has. He inherited his father's softness, a gentle heart, a belief that people are good unless proven otherwise, a belief I never shared. Life taught me differently, quietly, steadily, painfully, year after year. But Daniel trusts easily. And Clara knows exactly how to use that. Clara, my daughter-in-law of 15 years, is the kind of woman who smiles too widely when she wants something and not at all when she doesn't. A woman who speaks sweetly in public, sharply in private, and silently when she's planning something. For the first week in their home, everything felt normal. Clara cooked for me. Daniel set up a comfortable chair in the living room. My grandchildren hugged me and begged me for stories. It felt warm, almost familiar. But on the 8th day, something shifted. It was small, so small that anyone else might have dismissed it. Perhaps I should have too, but something about it tugged at me. I went to the kitchen for my morning tea, and when I opened the cabinet where my tea bags always sat, the box was gone. I checked another cabinet, then another. Finally, Clara walked in. "Oh, Margaret," she said with a bright smile, "you keep forgetting. I moved them to the left drawer. Remember, I told you yesterday." Except she hadn't. I know she hadn't, because I had been awake all evening sitting in the living room while she chatted with her sister on the phone. She hadn't moved a single thing in the kitchen. But I nodded anyway. Why argue over tea bags? One small incident, one tiny moment, but the unease stuck with me. The next morning, my reading glasses were gone from the lamp table. They turned up in the bathroom drawer. Clara said, "You really need to keep track of your things, Margaret. You gave me quite a scare this morning." A scare over misplaced glasses. Day 12, my mail went missing. Day 14, my green pill, my real medication, was replaced with a white one I didn't recognize. Day 16, my phone was found under the couch cushions. Day 18, Clara patted my shoulder when I repeated a story and whispered, "It's okay, we all forget sometimes." That whisper was the beginning, the first tear in the cloth, the first seed planted. At dinner that night, she said casually, "Daniel, your mother has been a bit forgetful lately. I'm worried she's not fully recovered from the fall." She said it with concern, as though she were caring, attentive, loyal. I let it slide, because I know how people fall into narratives without noticing. A new mother may be described as overwhelmed, and she unconsciously acts overwhelmed. A shy boy may be called awkward often enough to start believing it. And an old woman, well, an old woman is always an easy target for being forgetful. But I wasn't forgetting. Not yet. And I knew it. 2 days later, something happened that made the back of my neck go cold. I was in my bedroom, resting after lunch, when I heard Clara speaking softly in the hallway. Her voice carried just enough for me to hear. She misplaced her checkbook again. Poor thing. I think we need to keep a closer eye on her finances. What if she signed something dangerous? I sat up straight. Checkbook. Again. I hadn't misplaced it once. Clara continued. We need to talk to her doctor about this. If she keeps declining, we might need to consider getting some legal authority to help manage everything. My breath tightened. My chest felt heavy. Those words, legal authority, were not innocent. They were calculated. I swung my legs over the bed and stood quietly, listening. She lowered her voice. If we get power of attorney, everything becomes easier. Power of attorney. There it was. The knife she planned to use. Sharp, silent, legal. Clara wasn't concerned for my health. She was concerned for her future. She wanted control over my medication, my mail, my paperwork, my bank account, everything. Control over the little things first, then over the big ones. That's how manipulative people move. Slowly, subtly, stealthily. They build the story before they reveal the motive. I felt anger rise in me. Not loud and explosive, but quiet and cold. The kind of anger that sits inside your bones, waiting for the right moment. Because in that moment, I realized something. Clara doesn't think I'm losing my mind. She wants everyone else to think it. And she's building evidence. Fake evidence. Fabricated evidence. Staged evidence. That night, I tested a theory. I placed my reading glasses on the windowsill, right near my pillow where I sleep, and I placed my small silver watch on the lamp table. 2 items, 2 locations, easy to remember. The next morning, the glasses were on my dresser. The watch was in the laundry room, and Clara smiled so sweetly when I asked, "Have you seen my things?" "Oh, Margaret," she said, "you must have moved them. You don't even remember?" Then she laughed, lightly, softly, but I heard the malice underneath. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't my mind slipping away. This was orchestration, a performance of chaos, directed by Clara, acted out by me without my consent. I sat still all morning thinking about my next move. My mind drifted to my husband, who passed 15 years ago. He always said, the most dangerous people are the ones who smile while hiding their intentions. Clara fit that perfectly. But at 81, I couldn't confront her head on. She would twist my words. She would tell Daniel I was paranoid. She would use my age as a weapon. I needed proof, real proof, undeniable, unarguable, unshakable proof. The kind nobody can twist, the kind nobody can ignore, the kind that comes from a person who's been underestimated for too long. So I kept quiet. I stayed polite. I acted confused once or twice just to keep her comfortable. If you want to catch a snake, You let it think the grass is safe. And then, quietly, discreetly, deliberately, I began to plan. That night, long after everyone went to bed, I closed my bedroom door, pulled out my small notebook, and wrote the first sentence of the plan that would eventually tear Clara's entire scheme apart. Record everything. I underlined it twice. The next morning, Clara greeted me with her usual sugary voice, and I smiled back as though I had no idea what she was doing. But inside, I was awakening. Inside, I was sharpening. Inside, I was preparing. An old woman I may be, but helpless? Never. Because I wasn't losing my mind. I was about to expose someone else's. And the first step, the very first step, was to let Clara believe I was falling apart. Because people who think you're weak never see the moment you strike. I've lived long enough to know that real cruelty doesn't always yell. Sometimes it whispers. And in my house, it whispered with my daughter-in-law's perfume. She always entered my room without knocking. She'd tilt her head, smile that brittle smile, and say, "Just checking if you're okay. You seemed confused yesterday." Confused. That word started becoming her favorite, like a stain she wanted to rub deeper and deeper into my skin. At first, I didn't challenge it. Why would I? She married my son. She lived under my roof. I believed her intentions were good, even when her voice tasted like vinegar. But slowly, that word began spreading into conversations it didn't belong in. When I misplaced my glasses, "Mom, don't worry. Losing things happens at your age." When I forgot to turn off the kettle once, "You need supervision." When I repeated a story at dinner, "We'll have to talk to the doctor." And each time she said it, she looked directly at my son, as if she were planting seeds in the softest parts of his mind. Seeds I knew would grow into something poisonous. But here's what she didn't know. I may be old. I may walk slowly, think slowly, speak slowly sometimes, but I do not forget cruelty. And I do not ignore patterns. I've lived through wars, births, deaths, betrayals, and blessings. I know when someone is slowly painting a false image, stroke by stroke, hoping no one notices until the picture is complete. She wanted me labeled, diminished, tucked away like an unwanted photograph. And I could feel it every day. But the moment I knew, the exact moment her mask slipped, came on a Thursday morning so ordinary it almost felt scripted by fate. The morning she got careless. My daughter-in-law, Hira, was never clumsy. She was precise, calculated. If she moved a cup, it was intentional. If she smiled, it was strategic. If she touched my shoulder, she did so with the exact amount of pressure that looked caring from afar, even if it felt cold up close. But that Thursday, she miscalculated. She came into my room while thinking I was asleep, which I wasn't. Years of motherhood have trained my ears to wake up when doors open. She walked straight to my bedside table, not to check my medicine, not to adjust the blanket, but to pick up my pill organizer. I watched through half-closed eyes. She shook her head, whispering, "She won't notice. She's slipping." And then she removed 2 of my heart pills, just lifted them out, closed the box, and slipped them into her own pocket. My heart didn't skip a beat out of fear. It skipped from rage. Because that wasn't forgetfulness, that wasn't concern, that was manufacturing symptoms.
She wanted me disoriented, weak, foggy, dependent. She wanted to create the illusion she kept describing. She left the room quietly, humming under her breath. I remained perfectly still, perfectly silent, perfectly aware. But inside me, something ancient awakened, a sharp, cold clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't losing my mind. She was hoping I would. And that was the moment I decided the game had changed. The first recording. I didn't confront her. Confrontation gives the enemy time to prepare. Instead, I reached for the small device I've always kept in my drawer, my little voice recorder, a gift from my late husband when he said, "Your words matter. Keep them." I turned it on. My hands trembled, not from age, but from purpose. I recorded myself describing everything that had just happened. The missing pills, her whisper, the exact time, the exact place, the exact lie she'd been building. My voice was steady, controlled, cold. Then I placed the recorder under my blanket, ready for the next chapter. Because when someone wants to push an elderly person off the edge of sanity, you don't push back. You build a bridge made of evidence. The house started talking to me. Not literally, of course, but once you start paying attention, you notice everything. I noticed how often she accidentally disposed of my mail. I noticed how she told visitors, "Mom's memory's getting worse. Pray for her." I noticed how she corrected me before I even finished sentences. And I noticed how she spoke to my son when she thought I wasn't listening. She forgot the stove again. She told the same story 3 times. She left the gate open. She said your name wrong. Lies. Small ones. Stacked like bricks building a false narrative. I recorded them all. Every whisper, every sentence said in a tone dipped in honey but sharpened with venom. Day by day, hour by hour, I collected proof. She thought she was crafting my downfall. She didn't know I was crafting her exposure. The receipts. The thing about people like her is they always slip financially. One day, while she was out shopping, a bank notification appeared on the shared tablet. I'm old, not blind, and I know numbers better than most people know their own birthdays. She was transferring money, not large amounts, small ones, smart ones she could brush off as household expenses, but all from my account. Every rupee stolen was documented with screenshots, dates, times, amounts. She was committing little thefts to support big lies. She wanted me to look incompetent so she could take control of my finances. But by then, I had a folder full of recordings, screenshots, receipts, timestamps, and patterns. A folder she didn't even know existed. A folder I named When She Finally Falls, because I wasn't preparing for revenge out of hatred. I was preparing for truth, and truth is the most elegant kind of revenge, especially when it waits patiently. The day I tested her. One afternoon, I pretended to forget my grandson's name, just for a second, just long enough to watch her reaction. Her eyes lit up, real joy, real excitement, the kind of person shouldn't feel when they think someone is mentally slipping. She immediately grabbed her phone. "See, she's getting worse," she told my son in a rushed whisper. I smiled internally. She wasn't diagnosing me. She was desperate for her lie to become real. It wasn't working because I was wide awake.
But what she did next was her biggest mistake. She didn't know I had evidence. She didn't know I had recordings. She didn't know I was preparing to fight. But she definitely didn't know I had allies. Quiet ones, unexpected ones. Ones she overlooked because she thought she was the smartest person in the house. But that is a story that begins in part 3. Because the moment she walked into my room one night, thinking she had finally broken me, she said something that sealed her fate. And I caught every single word on tape. People assume the elderly are fragile, soft, breakable, like porcelain that needs careful handling. But fragile things don't survive 8 decades of life. We don't stay alive this long by being weak. We stay alive by watching quietly and striking only when the time is right. And that night, the night she thought she finally had me cornered, became the night I stopped being quiet. But let me take you back. The evening the house felt too still. It was a Thursday again. Funny how patterns repeat themselves. Fate has a taste for symmetry. My son was working late. My grandchildren were asleep. Even the neighborhood dogs were silent. But she wasn't. Hira moved around the house with a strange purpose that evening. Opening drawers, closing them softly, checking windows twice, as if preparing for a moment only she knew was coming. Her heels clicked lightly against the floor, not rushed, not casual, confident. Too confident. I could feel something coming, something ugly, something she had been rehearsing in her head for weeks. I sat in my chair, reading the same page 3 times, not because I couldn't focus, but because I didn't want her to know I was listening. She was on the phone, her voice low, tight, defensive. No, she's getting worse, I'm telling you. She forgot her medicine again. I smirked. I hadn't forgotten my medicine. She had hidden it earlier. I heard her pacing as she continued. Yes, I'll talk to the doctor myself. Someone has to take responsibility. She can't manage anything on her own now. She paused. Then a softer, more calculated tone. Once we get the assessment, things will be easier. Legally, I mean. Legally. There it was. The word that opens the door to every greedy intention. She wasn't just trying to paint me as unstable. She wanted power of attorney, control of bank accounts, control of property, control of decisions, control of me. But the thing she didn't understand is, when someone tries to take everything from you, it unlocks a version of you even you forgot existed. Her final push. At around 10:30 p.m., she entered my room. No knock, no greeting, just a performance. She placed a cup of tea on my bedside table. "Drink this, Mom," she said sweetly, too sweetly, the kind of sweetness that hides poison. I didn't touch it. She sat on the edge of my bed, sighing dramatically, the kind of sigh meant to sound tired, exhausted, burdened. "You scared me today," she began softly. "You didn't recognize me when I came home." I stared at her calmly, because I had recognized her. I recognized the danger. I recognized the intention. I recognized the lie. But I let her continue. "You need help, Mom. Real help. You're not safe on your own anymore." She reached for my hand. I let her hold it. It's easier to watch a snake when it thinks it has wrapped itself around you. "We need to take you to a doctor tomorrow," she said. He'll confirm everything. And then we'll make decisions. Decisions. That word again, always said as if I wasn't even in the room. Then she leaned in and whispered, almost lovingly, "Don't fight this. You won't win." Oh. If only she knew how wrong she was. Because right then, under my pillow, my recorder captured every single word, every threat coded in concern, every lie disguised as love, every piece of manipulation she thought she delivered flawlessly. That tiny device was becoming her greatest enemy. But she didn't know that yet. The staged incident. Just when I thought she would leave, she stood up, walked around the room, and did something I didn't expect. She opened the window wide. Then she picked up my reading lamp and unplugged it, placing it awkwardly on the ground. She dropped one of her earrings beside it, deliberately. And right then, it clicked. She wasn't just building a story. She was building a scene. A scene she could show my son the next morning. Look, she opened the window in the cold. Look, she knocked over her lamp. Look, she dropped things. She's confused. She was staging my decline like a director setting up a scene in a movie. But she wasn't ready for the plot twist I had already cast her in. The sentence that sealed her fate. Before she left, she turned to me one last time, her face soft, her eyes full of fake sympathy. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she whispered. "You should be grateful I'm stepping in. When your mind goes completely, you'll thank me." That was it. That was her fatal mistake. Not the theft, not the whispers, not the staged incidences, but this, her belief that I would eventually lose who I am. That sentence wasn't cruel. It was arrogant. Arrogance always breaks people more than violence does. She turned off the lights and walked out, humming like someone who had already won. But the recorder under my pillow, still glowing red, had captured every note of her downfall. The allies she never expected. She didn't know that someone else already suspected her, someone she underestimated, someone she dismissed because he was only 11 years old. My grandson. He had seen her throw away my mail once. He had overheard her telling someone, "I forgot my own son's name." He had seen her remove a paper from my drawer and shove it in her pocket. But children know when adults lie. They have a sixth sense for it. Earlier that week, he whispered to me, "Nani, she tells Baba you forget things, but you don't forget when you play games with me." I kissed his forehead and said nothing. Smart women don't reveal weapons too early. But I did ask him for one thing. "If you ever see her take something of mine, tell me quietly. Don't tell anyone else. It's our secret." And so, that night, after she left my room, he tiptoed in. "Nani, she took something from your dresser," he whispered. I opened my eyes, fully alert. What did she take? A paper, something with a stamp. Ah, my medical report from last month. The one that said my memory was perfectly fine. She wanted to destroy it. The moment I stopped being quiet. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair, my recorder beside me, my evidence folder open on my lap. Every receipt, every screenshot, every lie. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was preparing for the confrontation of a lifetime. Not a fight with shouting or slapping or violence, a fight with truth. Because truth is the sharpest weapon. It cuts silently. It bleeds dignity. It kills lies without leaving bruises. I waited for dawn, and as the first thin slice of sunlight entered my room, touching my hands, I knew tomorrow morning her entire world would collapse. Not because I wanted revenge, but because she forced me to defend my sanity.
Dawn has a way of revealing things. Even the dust on the windowsill looks honest in the morning. And that day, the morning I chose to stop being quiet, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Strength. Not the strength of youth, not the strength of muscles or speed, but the strength that comes from a lifetime of surviving. Every loss, every betrayal, every test life throws at a woman who refuses to break. My bones may have been brittle, but my mind, sharper than the knife she used to peel apples with. I sat upright in my chair, dressed neatly, my hair combed back. Not for vanity, for battle. Because when you confront a liar, you don't show up looking like a victim. You show up looking like someone impossible to defeat. The house woke up like any other day. Birds chirped, the kettle whistled. My grandson yawned his little sleepy yawn as he walked to the kitchen. But something else was stirring too. Her. Hera walked around with that little victorious bounce in her step. She knew she had staged everything perfectly the night before. The lamp knocked over, the window open, the dropped earring, the missing medical report, the soft, poisonous whisper she planned to repeat. She believed she had already won the battle. But she didn't know the war hadn't even begun. I waited patiently in the living room, my cane by my side, my recorder tucked safely into my shawl. My evidence folder sat on the table in front of me like a quiet threat.
She didn't even look at it when she walked past, too confident, too certain she had me cornered. Ignorance is a dangerous blindfold. The breakfast performance. I heard her call my son softly, "Baba, come here." He walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, unaware of the storm he was about to witness. I remained silent in the living room, listening. "There's something we need to discuss," she whispered dramatically. I could almost hear her adjusting her halo, the one she liked to pretend she wore. "What happened?" my son asked. "She's declining," she said with a breathy sadness. "I'm seriously worried. Last night was bad." Bad? Oh, sweetheart, bad was still waiting around the corner for you. My son sighed, sounding tired. What happened? Here it came. She stepped into her role like a trained actress. She opened her window in the cold again. The lamp fell over too. I think she didn't even remember doing it. Lie, lie, lie. And Baba, she forgot who I was for a moment. That one hit him. I felt the silence. She knew where to aim her arrows.
"She's losing her mind," she whispered, "and someone needs to take responsibility before something terrible happens." My son exhaled slowly. I could hear the confusion in his breath, the fear, the guilt children often feel when someone convinces them they're failing their parent. It would have worked if I didn't walk into the kitchen at that exact moment, the beginning of her fall. I stepped in, steady, slow, deliberate. "I didn't forget who you were," I said calmly. She spun around, startled. "Oh, Mom, you're awake." "Awake," I repeated. "Yes, more awake than you think." She tried to smile, but her eyes flicked to the evidence folder on the table. "What's that?" she asked cautiously. I didn't answer her. Instead, I turned to my son. "Baba, sit." He knew that tone. It was the tone I used when he was a child and tried to lie about breaking a vase. He sat. Hira remained standing, hands folded like some saint being unfairly accused. She didn't understand yet, but her mask was about to melt. The first blow, truth. I opened my folder slowly. The first paper I displayed wasn't a receipt or a screenshot. It was last month's medical report, the one she tried to steal, the one proving I was mentally sound. She paled. My son frowned. "Why was this missing from your drawer?" he asked her. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. So I answered for her. "Because she took it." Her face stiffened. "Mom, what are you saying?" I lifted my hand gently. No interruptions. Then I pulled out the next item. Screenshots. All the money she transferred from my account. Small amounts, but consistent and undeniable. She tried to speak. "Those were for groceries." "Groceries don't cost the same suspicious round figure every Tuesday at 4:15 p.m. Her face blanched. My son looked between us, shock growing like fire. But the worst part, the part that broke him, was still waiting. So I reached into my shawl and pulled out the recorder. Placed it on the table. She froze completely. "Mom!" I clicked play, and the kitchen filled with the exact words she whispered to me the night before. "You should be grateful I'm stepping in. When your mind goes completely, you'll thank me." My son's face turned to stone. She stepped back, shocked, exposed, stripped of every lie she'd been weaving for months. But I wasn't done. The recorder kept playing, her staged pity, her manipulative tone, her threats disguised as concern, and then the whisper that destroyed her. "Don't fight this, you won't win." When the recording stopped, silence filled the room like smoke after a Crackerbecker. Deadly, thick, suffocating. My son stood up very slowly. "Hira, what have you been doing to my mother?" She panicked. "That's not what it sounds like." "It sounds exactly like what it is," I cut in. Her facade, the gentleness, the sweetness, the false devotion, crumbled like paper left in rain. She gasped, looking between us, eyes wild. "I was trying to help. You don't understand." "Oh, I understand," I said gently. "You've been trying to break me while pretending to build me." The unexpected witness. Just then, a small voice spoke from behind me. "Nani?" My grandson stepped into the kitchen, holding something in his tiny hands, a folded paper. He looked at his mother with fear. "Mom, this fell from your pocket yesterday." He handed it to my son. My stolen medical report. Hira's entire face went ghost white. A child had become the final witness. Her unraveling. "No, this is all wrong. She's manipulating you. She's lying. My son raised his hand. Enough. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He didn't rage. The calmness in his voice was far more terrifying. "You tried to make me believe my own mother was losing her mind." Her breath hitched. I was doing it for us, for the family." "And you stole from her." I was going to return it." "And you staged scenes to make her look unstable." "That's not... I didn't..." I watched her unravel, piece by piece, lie by lie. Her downfall wasn't violent. It was quiet, like paper burning slowly from the edges.
The sentence that freed me. Finally, my son spoke the words I had been waiting to hear. "You will leave this house today." Her knees buckled. "But, Baba, please." "You nearly destroyed her." He turned to me. "Ommi, I'm so sorry." I placed my hand over his. "You didn't fail me," I whispered. "You believed someone you trusted. That isn't a weakness. It's proof your heart is good." He lowered his head. But I wasn't done. Not until I delivered the sentence she deserved. Not the cruel one, not the vengeful one, the true one. I turned to her and said softly, "You told me I wouldn't win, but I didn't need to win. I only needed to show the truth. And the truth has already defeated you." She stared at me, broken, speechless, exposed. And for once, she had no script left to hide behind.
The moment she stepped out of the house, with her bags hastily packed, her face streaked with panic, denial, and a fear she had never tasted before, the entire atmosphere shifted. It was like someone had opened a door inside the house that had been locked for months. Air could finally move. Light could finally settle. Silence could finally be peaceful again, not tense, not watchful, not heavy. She left behind the scent of her lies, but she also left something else. Space. Space for healing, space for truth, space for me. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe without feeling watched. But the story doesn't end with her leaving. Real endings, especially for women my age, come quietly, slowly, and with more wisdom than anger. Because revenge is never the final act. Peace is. The days after her downfall. For the next few days, the house was strangely quiet. Not silent, quiet. A warm kind of quiet. My son kept checking on me every hour. "Mom, do you need anything? Mom, should I make you tea? Mom, are you okay?" He felt guilty. Of course he did. Guilt is heavy when you realize you trusted the wrong person for too long. But I always answered the same way. "I'm fine, Baba. I'm more fine than I've been in months." My grandson stayed close to me too.
He would curl up beside me with his homework, glancing up every few minutes to make sure I was still there. Children sense danger even when no one says a word, and they sense relief even more strongly. I held his hand often, not because I needed support, but because I wanted him to feel safe again. Because when a mother is unsafe, a child's entire world shakes. But when she stabilizes, they grow roots again.
The apology that finally came. On the third night, when the house was quiet and warm lamps glowed softly across the living room, my son sat across from me. He looked older, worn down by guilt. "Mom," he said quietly, "I can't forgive myself for believing her." I reached over and touched his hand. "You didn't believe her," I corrected him. "You believed the version of her she performed for you." He exhaled, a long, shaking breath. "She made me feel like you were slipping away." I shook my head gently. "I wasn't slipping away, Baba. I was slipping apart because she was pushing me." His eyes watered. "I should have seen it. I should have protected you." "You were protecting your family," I said softly. "That is never wrong. Misplaced trust is not a sin. Malicious betrayal is." He looked down. For the first time in months, I saw my son. Not a worried caretaker, not a confused husband. Just my boy. A boy who needed to hear he wasn't to blame. "Listen to me," I said, holding his face like I did when he was small. "She fooled you, but she didn't break you, and she didn't break me." He closed his eyes, letting my words settle where the wounds were deepest. "And she definitely didn't win," I added with a small laugh. That finally made him smile. The call she made. 3 days after leaving, she called. Her voice trembled, not with guilt, she wasn't capable of that, but with fear. "Mom," she tried to sound calm, "can we talk?" "No," I said gently, "not anymore." She stammered, "I think this is all a misunderstanding." "It's not," I replied. "Baba won't talk to me. He will, when he's ready, but it won't fix what you did." Her voice cracked. "I was stressed. The kids, the house, work. I didn't mean to hurt you." Manipulators always try to soften the story after they're caught.
"It's done," I said. "I don't hate you, but I don't trust you. And peace is more important to me than giving you a second chance." She sniffed, her confidence gone. "I just want my family back." And for a moment, just a moment, I felt a tiny ache in my chest. Not for her, for what she could have been. If she had chosen honesty over control, kindness over power, truth over manipulation. But she didn't, and choices have consequences. "I hope you become someone your children can be proud of," I told her softly, "and someone my son can heal with." Then I ended the call. Not with anger, not with triumph, but with closure. Because real victory isn't when someone suffers. Real victory is when you finally let go without carrying their poison inside you. The visit to the clinic. A week later, I insisted on something important, a full medical evaluation. Not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted my son to hear the truth from someone else's lips. The doctor ran the tests, asked the questions, evaluated my memory, judgment, awareness, reaction time. After an hour, he smiled warmly. "Her mind is excellent," he said. "Sharper than people 20 years younger." My son looked at me with pride shining in his eyes. The doctor continued, "Mental decline doesn't happen overnight. and she shows zero signs of impairment. She has been under stress, that's all.
Stress, a gentle word for what Hira had put me through. But I wasn't angry. I already won. The reward life gave me. The biggest change came from my son. After the doctor declared my mind healthy, he held my hand and said, "You're staying with me, Mom. Not because I think you need help, but because I want you here." I smiled. "I'll stay," I said softly, "but with conditions." He blinked. "Conditions?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I want my independence respected. I want my own bank access. And I want honesty. Always." He nodded immediately. "Done. All of it." My grandson hugged me around the waist. The warmth of that moment was stronger than any revenge I could have taken, because revenge wasn't the goal. Respect was. Peace was. And now I had both. The letter I wrote and never sent. One night, weeks later, I sat at my small wooden desk by the window and wrote something unexpected. A letter. To her. I never intended to send it, but writing is sometimes the way we remove the last splinter stuck in our hearts. The letter said,
You almost made me doubt myself. That was your greatest cruelty. But it became my greatest awakening. You taught me that even in old age, a woman still has choices, still has strength, still has a voice. And I used mine, not to punish you, but to protect myself. I hope you find whatever emptiness made you hurt me, and I hope you fix it before it hurts your children too. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and that was enough. The final moment of peace. It happened on a quiet evening. My grandson and I were sitting on the balcony, watching the sky turn gold, then pink, then purple. He leaned his head on my shoulder. "Nanny, are you happy now?" he asked. I smiled at the horizon. "Not just happy," I said. "I am free." He nodded like he understood, even if he didn't fully. Then he whispered something that warmed every part of my old, tired heart. "I knew you'd beat her." I kissed his forehead. "It wasn't about beating her," I said softly. "It was about showing her that truth doesn't need strength to win. It just needs time." And as the sky darkened into a peaceful calm, I closed my eyes and let out a breath I had been holding for months. A breath of survival, a breath of dignity, a breath of freedom. Because she tried to take my sanity, but she forgot one thing. I have lived too long, loved too fiercely, and survived too much to ever let someone else write the ending of my story. And so, I wrote it myself.